Thanks for claiming Twitch. Thanks for claiming first, Twitch. Good morning. I just want to give myself a little quick sound check here. Sorry if there's some doubling. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right, we're here for the last episode of We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. return with chapter 31 of 40. This is the last day today. Welcome in soon. Thanks for the hydrate. Thank you. Okay. Chapter 31, our last and final session with We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. The Great Operation. I Forgave Everything. The Collision of Trains. Saved at the very last moment, when it seemed that there was nothing to hold on to, that it was the end. It was as if you already ascended the steps toward the threatening machine of the well-doer, or as if the great glass bell with a heavy thud had already covered you, and for the last time in life, you looked at the blue sky to devour it with your eyes, when suddenly, it was only a dream. The sun is pink and cheerful, and the wall, what happiness to be able to touch the cold wall, and the pillow, to delight endlessly in the little cavity formed by your own head in the white pillow. Good morning, Luca. Thanks for coming by. To delight endlessly in the cavity formed by your own head in the white pillow. This is approximately what I felt when I read the State Journal this morning. It has all been a terrible dream, and the dream is over, and I was so feeble, so unfaithful, that I thought of selfish, voluntary death. I am ashamed now to reread yesterday's last lines, but then let them remain as a memory of that incredible what might have happened, which will not happen. On the front page of the State Journal, the following gleamed: Rejoice, for from now on we are perfect. Until today, your own creation engines were more perfect than you. Why? For every spark from a dynamo is a spark of pure reason. Each motion of a piston, a pure syllogism. Is it not true that the same faultless reason is within you? The philosophy of the cranes, presses, and pumps is complete and clear like a circle. But is your philosophy less circular? The beauty of a mechanism lies in its immutable, precise rhythm, like that of a pendulum. And have you not become as precise as a pendulum? You who are brought up on the system of Taylor? Yes, but there is one difference. Mechanisms have no fancy. Did you ever notice a pump cylinder with a wide, distant, sensuously dreaming smile upon its face while it was working? Did you ever hear cranes that were restless, tossing about and sighing at the night during the hours designed for rest? Rock, if you start an ad before it tells you the 5-minute timer, it will run another set if it's pre-programmed. Okay, yeah, so that's what happened. I thought I could avoid that pre-programmed one by just running it early, but I guess I just ran 2 in a row. Oh, thanks. Live and you learn, I guess. Did you ever notice a pump cylinder with a wide, distant, sensuously dreaming smile upon its face while it was working? Did you ever hear cranes that were restless, tossing about and sighing at the night during the hours designed for rest? No. Yet on your faces, you may well blush with shame. The guardians have more and more frequently seen those smiles, and they have heard your sighs. And should you hide your eyes you should hide your eyes for the shame. The historians of the United States have all tendered their resignations so as to be relieved from having to record such a shameful occurrences. It is not your fault. You are ill, and the name of your illness is fancy. It is a worm that gnaws black wrinkles on one's forehead. It is a fever that drives one to run further and further, even though further may begin where happiness ends. It is the last barricade on our road to happiness. Rejoice, this barricade has been blasted at last. The road is open. The latest discovery of our state science is that there is a center for fancy, a miserable little nervous knot in the lower region of the frontal lobe of the brain. A triple treatment of this knot with X-rays will cure you of fancy forever. You are perfect. You are mechanized. The road to 100% happiness is open. Hasten then, all of you, young and old, hasten to undergo the great operation. Hasten to the auditoriums where the great operation is being performed. Long live the great operation. Long live the United States. Long live the well-doer. You, had you not read all this in my records, which look like an ancient, strange novel, Had you, like me, held in your trembling hands the newspaper, smelling of typographic ink, if you knew, as I do, that all this is a mostly certain reality, if not the reality of today, then that of tomorrow, would you not feel the very things I feel? Would your head not whirl as mine does? Would there not run over your back and arms those strange, sweet, icy needles? Would you not feel that you were a giant, an atlas? That if you only stood up and straightened out, you could reach the ceiling with your head? I snatched the telephone receiver. I-330? Yes. Yes. Yes, 330. And then, swallowing my own words, I shouted, "Are you at home?" "Yes." "Have you read?" "You are reading now." Isn't it stupendous?" Yes, a long, dark silence. The wires buzzed almost imperceptibly. She was thinking. Give me a second just to have a drink quick. "I must see you today without fail. Yes, in my room, after 16, without fail." Dear, she is such a dear, without fail. I was smiling, and I could not stop. I felt I would carry that smile with me into the street like a light above my head.
Come on, stretch
When I get off work, I can help you with that. You force the pre-core program one to start within 5 minutes of stream start. Yeah, I normally have mine start a minute after I start the stream, just so it kind of runs while I'm getting everything signed up, set up and finished. I just wanted to move things along, and I guess I kind of delayed myself at first. Ruin's in here. Oh, thanks for the hydrate and the stretch, Ruru. I'll go ahead and do that right now. Oh, and I gotta do squats as well. Oh no. I guess I'll let the stretch first, and then do these squats. Welcome in, Bishop. Thanks for stopping by. All right, squat time. 2, 3.
He's using improper form, chat. He's gonna injure himself.
Sorry, my form was bad, but I couldn't move my chair anymore because the door was in the way. I'm doing well, Bishop. Just getting started. Doing well. Good to see you. Alright, now we're back with... Outside, the wind ran over me, whirling, whistling, whipping. But I felt even more cheerful. Alright, go on. Go on moaning and groaning. The walls cannot be torn down. Flying leaden clouds broke over my head. Well, let them. They could not eclipse the sun. We chained it to the zenith like so many Joshuas, sons of Nun. At the corner, a group of such Joshuas, sons of Nun, were standing with their foreheads pasted to the glass of the wall. Inside, on a dazzling white table, a number already lay. You could see 2 naked souls emerging from under the sheet in a yellow angle. White Maddox bent over his head, a white hand, a stretched out hand holding a syringe filled with something. "And you, what are you waiting for?" I asked nobody in particular, or rather all of them. "And you?" Someone's round head turned to me. Afterward, I must first. Somewhat confused, I left the place. I really had to see I-330 first, but why first? I could not explain to myself. The docks, the integral, bluish like ice, was glistening and sparkling. The engine was caressingly grumbling, repeating some one word, as if it were my word, a familiar one. Thanks for the bark, silly. The engine was caressingly grumbling, repeating some one word, as if it were my word, a familiar one. I bent down and stroked the long, cold tube of the motor. Dear, what a dear tube. Tomorrow it will come to life. Tomorrow, for the first time, it will tremble with burning, flaming streams in its bowels. With what eyes would I have looked at the glass monster had everything remained as it was yesterday. If I knew that tomorrow at 12 I should betray it, yes, betray. Someone behind cautiously touched my elbow. I turned around, the plate-like face of the second builder. Stroke me next, stroke my glass monster. I'm gonna hold you to that, silly. Do you already know? Do you know already? He asked. What? About the operation? Yes. How everything, suddenly. No, not that. The trial flight is put off until day after tomorrow on account of that operation. They rushed us for nothing. We hurried on account of that operation. Funny, limited man. He could see no further than his own platter. If only he knew that, but for the operation, tomorrow at 12 he would have been locked up in a glass cage, tossing about, trying to climb the walls. At 12:30, when I came into my room, I saw you. She was sitting at my table, firm, straight, bone-like, resting her right cheek on her hand. She must have been waiting for a long time, because when she rose brusquely to meet me, the five white imprints of her fingers remained on her cheek. For a second, that terrible morning came back to me, she beside I-330, indignant, but for a second only. All that was at once washed away by today's sun, as happens sometimes when you enter your room on a bright day and absent-mindedly turn on the light. The bulb shines, but is out of place, comical, unnecessary. Without hesitation, I held out my hand to her. I forgave her everything. She firmly grasped both my hands and pressed them till they hurt. Her cheeks quivering and hanging down like ancient precious ornaments. She said with emotion, I was waiting. I want only one moment. I only wanted to say, how happy, how joyous I am for you. You realize, of course, that tomorrow or day after tomorrow, you will be healthy again, as if born anew. I noticed my papers on the table. The last 2 pages of my record of yesterday were in the place where I had left them the night before. If only she knew what I had written there, but I didn't really care. Now it was only history. It was a ridiculously far-off distance, like an image seen through a reversed opera glass. Yes, I said. A while ago, while passing along the avenue, I saw a man walking ahead of me. His shadow stretched along the pavement, and I think of it, his shadow was luminous. I think, more than that, I am absolutely certain that tomorrow all shadows will disappear. Not a shadow from any person or anything. The sun will be shining through everything. She, gently and earnestly, You are a dreamer. I would not allow my children in school to talk that way. She told me something about the children, that they were all led in one herd to the operation, that it was necessary to bind them afterward with ropes, that one must love pitilessly, yes, pitilessly, and that she thought she might finally decide to. She smoothed out the grayish-blue fold of the uniform that fell between her knees, swiftly pasted her smiles all over me, and went out. Fortunately, the sun did not stop today. The sun was running. It was already 16 o'clock. I was knocking at the door. My heart was knocking. Come in. I threw myself upon the floor near her chair to embrace her limbs, to lift my head upward and look into her eyes, first into one, then into the other, and in each of them I see the reflection of myself in wonderful captivity. There, beyond the wall, it looked stormy. There the clouds were leaden. Let them be. My head was overcrowded with impetuous words, and I was speaking aloud, and flying with the sun I knew not where. No, now we were flying where we were flying. No, now we knew where we were flying. Planets were following me, planets sparkling with flame and populated with fiery singing flowers, and mute planets, blue ones where rational stones were unified into one organized society, and planets which, like our own Earth, had already reached the apex of 100% happiness. Suddenly, from above, and don't you think that at the apex are precisely stones unified into an organized society? The triangle grew sharper and sharper, darker and darker. Happiness, well, desires are tortures, aren't they? It is clear Therefore, that happiness is when there are no longer any desires, not a single desire anymore. What an error, what an absurd prejudice it was, that we used to mark happiness with the sign plus. No, absolute happiness must be marked with minus. Divine minus. I remember I stammered unintelligibly. Absolute zero. Minus 273 Celsius. Minus 273, exactly. A somewhat cool temperature. Doesn't it prove that we're all at the summit? But doesn't it prove that we are at the summit? As before, she seemed somehow to speak for me and through me, developing my own thoughts to the end. But there was something so morbid in her tone that I could not refrain. With an effort, I drew out a no. No, I said. You are mocking. She burst out laughing loudly, too loudly. Swiftly, in a second, she laughed herself to some unseen edge, stumbled, and fell over. Silence. She stood up, put her hands upon my shoulders, and looked into me for a long while. Then she pulled me toward her, and everything seemed to have disappeared, save her sharp, hot lips. Goodbye. The words came from afar, from heaven, from above, and reached me not at once, but only after a minute, perhaps 2 minutes later. Why? Why goodbye? You have been ill, have you not? Because of me you have committed crimes. Hasn't all this tormented you? And now you have the operation to look forward to. You'll be cured of me, and that means goodbye. No, I cried, a pitilessly sharp black triangle on a white background. What? Do you mean that you don't want happiness? My head was breaking into pieces. Two logical trains collided and crawled upon each other, rattling and smothering. Well, I am waiting. You must choose the operation and 100% happiness, or... I cannot. Without you, I must not. Without you, I said, or perhaps I only thought. I'm not sure which, but I-330 heard. Yes, I know, she said. Then her hands still on my shoulders and her eyes not letting my eyes go. Then, until tomorrow at 12. You remember? No, it was postponed for a day after tomorrow. So much the better for us. At 12, day after tomorrow. I walked alone in the dusky street. The wind was whirling, carrying, driving me like a piece of paper. Fragments of the leaden sky were soaring. It'd soar through the infinite for another day or two. Units of numbers were brushing my sides, yet I was walking alone. It was clear to me that all were being saved, but that there was no salvation for me, for I do not want salvation. Record 32. I do not believe. Tractors. A little human splinter. Do you believe that you will die? Oh yes. Man is mortal. I am a man, consequently. No, not that. I know that, you know that, but I ask, has it ever happened that you actually believed it? Believed definitely, believed not with your reason but with your body, that you actually felt that someday those fingers which you now hold this page with will become yellow, icy. No, of course you cannot believe this. That is why you haven't jumped from the 10th floor to the pavement before now. That is why you eat, turn over these pages, shave, smile, write. This very thing, yes, exactly this is alive in me today. I know that small black hand on the clock will slide down here toward midnight, and then it will again start to ascend. And it will cross some last border, and the improbable tomorrow will have arrived. I know it, but somehow I do not believe it. Or perhaps I think that 24 hours are 24 years. So I am still able to act, to hurry, to answer questions, to climb the rope ladder to the integral. I am still able to feel how the integral shakes the surface of the water, and I still understand that I must grasp the railing, and I am still able to feel the cold glass in my hand. I see the transparent, living cranes bending their long necks, carefully feeding the integral with the terrible explosive food which the motors need. I still see below on the river the blue veins and knots of water swollen by the wind. Yet, all this seems very distant from me, foreign, flat, like a draft on a sheet of paper. And it seems to me strange when the flat, draft-like face of the second builder suddenly asks, "Well then, how much fuel for the motors shall we load on? If we count on 3 or say 3.5 hours. I see before me, over a draft, my hand with the counter and the logarithmic dial at the figure 15. 15 tons, but you'd better take 1,000. I said that because I know that tomorrow, I noticed that my hands and the dial began to tremble. 1,000? What you need such a lot for? That would last a week. No, more than a week. Well, nobody knows. I do know. The wind whistled. Air seemed to be stuffed to the limit with something invisible. I had difficulty in breathing, difficulty in walking, and with difficulty, slowly, but without stopping for a second, the hand of the accumulating tower was crawling at the end of the avenue. The peak of the tower reached into the very clouds, dull, blue, groaning in a subdued way, sucking electricity from the clouds. The tubes of the musical tower resounded. As always, 4 abreast, but the rows did not seem as firm as usual. They were swinging, bending more and more, perhaps because of the wind. There, they seemed to stumble upon something in the corner. They drew back and stopped, congealed, a close mass, a clot, breathing rapidly. At once all of them stretched their necks like geese. "Look! No! Look! There! Quick!" "They? Are those they?" "Ah, never! I'd rather put my head straight into the machine." "Silence! Are you crazy?" On the corner, the doors of the auditorium were ajar, and a wide column of about 50 people. The word people is not the right one. These were heavy-wheeled automatons, seemingly bound in iron and moved by an invisible mechanism. Not people, but a sort of human-like tractor. Over their heads, floating in the air, a white banner with a golden sun embroidered on it, and the rays of the sun. "We are the first. We have already been operated upon. Follow us, all of you." Slowly, unhesitatingly, they moved through the crowd, and it was clear that if they had had their way in a Slowly, unhesitatingly, they moved through the crowd, and it was clear that if they had had their way, a wall, a tree, a house, they would have moved on just as unhesitatingly through the wall, the tree, or the house. In the middle of the avenue, they fused and stretched out into a chain, arm in arm, their faces turned towards us. And we, a human clot, tense, the hair pricking our heads, we waited. Our necks were stretched out goose fashion. Clouds. The wind whistled. Suddenly, the wings of the chain from right and left bent quickly around us, and faster, like a heavy engine descending a hill. They closed the ring and pulled us toward the yawning doors and inside. Somebody's piercing cry, "They're driving us in! Run!" Everybody ran. Close to the wall, there was still an open, living gate of human beings. Everybody dashed through it, heads forward. Their heads became sharp wedges, and with their ribs, shoulders, hips, like a stream of water compressed in a fire hose, they spurted out in the form of a fan, and all around me, stamping feet, raised arms, unifs. The double-curved S, with his transparent wing ears, appeared for a moment close before my eyes. He disappeared as suddenly. I was alone among arms and legs appearing for a second and disappearing. I was running. I dashed to the entrance of a house to stop to catch my breath, my back close to the door, and suddenly, like a splinter borne by the wind, a human being was thrown toward me. All the while I have been following you. I do not want, I'm ready. Small round hands on my sleeves, round dark blue eyes. It was 090. She just slipped along my body like a unif, which is hanger broken. Slips along. Hold on, what the hell? She just slipped along my body like a unif, which, its hanger broken, slips along the wall to fall upon the floor. Like a little bundle, she crumpled below me on the cold doorstep, and I stood over her, stroking her head, her face. My hands were wet. I felt as if I were very big and she very small. a small part of myself. Morning, Apollo. Thanks for dropping by. I felt something quite different from what I feel toward I-330. I think the ancients must have had similar feelings toward their private children. Below, filtering through her hands with which she was covering her face, a voice came to me. Every night I cannot. If they cure me, every night I sit in the darkness alone and think of him, and of what he will look like if I am cured, I would have nothing to live with. Do you understand me? You must. You must. An absurd feeling, yet it was there. I really must. Absurd because this duty of mine was nothing but another crime. Absurd because white and black cannot be one, duty and crime cannot coincide, or perhaps there is no black and white in life, but everything depends upon the first logical premise. If the premise is that I unlawfully gave her a child. It's all right, but only don't, I said. Of course I understand. I must take you to I-330, as I once offered to, so that she... Yes, in a low voice without uncovering her face. I helped her rise. Silently, we went along the darkening street, each busy with our own thoughts, or perhaps with the same thought. We walked between silent, leaden houses, through the tense, whipping branches of the wind. All at once, through the whistling of the wind, I heard, as if splashing through ditches, the familiar footsteps coming from some unseen point. At the corner I turned around, and among the clouds, flying upside down in the dim glass reflection of the pavement, I saw S. Instantly my arms became foreign, swinging out of time, and I began to tell 090 in a low voice that tomorrow, yes, tomorrow was the day of the first flight of the Integral, and that it was to be something that had never happened before in all history. Great, miraculous. Think of it, for the first time in life to find myself outside the limits of our city and see who knows what is beyond the green wall. 090 looked at me extremely surprised, her blue eyes trying to penetrate mine. She looked at my senselessly swinging arms, but did not let her say a word. I kept talking, and within me, apart from what I was saying and audible only to myself, thought was feverishly buzzing and knocking. Impossible. You must not lead him to I-330. Instead of turning to the right, I turned to the left. The bridge submissively bent its back in a slavish way to all three of us, to me, to O, to him behind. Lights were falling from the houses across the water, falling and breaking into thousands of sparks which danced feverishly, sprayed with the mad white foam of the water. Somewhere not far away, the wind was moaning like the tensely... Somewhere not far away, the wind was moaning like the tensely stretched string of a double bass, and through this bass, behind us all the while. The house where I live, at the entrance, O stopped and began. No, you promised, did you not, that... I did not let her finish. Hastily, I pushed her through the entrance, and we found ourselves in the lobby. At the controller's desk, the familiar, hanging, excitedly quivering cheeks. A group of numbers around. They were quarreling about something. Heads bending over the banisters on the second floor. They were running downstairs one by one. But about that later. I drew 090 at once into the opposite unoccupied corner and sat down with my back to the wall. I saw a dark, large-headed shadow gliding back and forth over the sidewalk. I took out my notebook. 090 in her chair was sinking slowly, as if she was evaporating from under her unif, as if her body were thawing, as if only her empty unif were left, and empty eyes taking one into the blue emptiness. In a tired voice, "Why did you bring me here? You lied to me." "No, not so loud. Look here. Do you see? Through the wall?" "Yes, I see a shadow." "He's always following me. I cannot. Do you understand? I cannot. Therefore, I'm going to write a few words to I-330. You take the note and go alone. I know he will remain here." Her body began to take form and to move beneath the unif. On her face, a faint sunrise, dawn. I put the note between her cold fingers, pressed her hand firmly, and for the last time looked into her blue eyes. Goodbye. Perhaps someday. She freed her hand. Bending over slightly, she slowly moved away, made 2 steps, turned around quickly, and again we were side by side. Her lips were moving. With her lips and with her eyes, she repeated some inaudible word. What an unbearable smile. What suffering. Then the bent-over human splinter went to the door, a bent-over little shadow beyond the wall. Without turning around, she went on faster, still faster. I went to Yu's desk. With emotion filling her indignant gills, she said to me, "They've all gone crazy. He, for instance, is trying to assure me that he himself saw a naked man covered with hair near the ancient house." A voice from the group of empty raised heads. "Yes, I repeat it, yes." "Well, what do you think of it?" Oh, what a delirium. The word delirium came out of her mouth so full of conviction, so unbending, that I asked myself, perhaps it really was nothing but delirium, all that has been going on around me lately. I glanced at my hairy hand, and I remembered. There are, undoubtedly, some drops of that blood of the sun and woods in you. That is why perhaps you... No, unfortunately it was not delirium. Or no, unfortunately it was not delirium.
Come on, stretch.
Thanks for the
Come on, move it, Rob,
hydrate
move
and
it.
stretch again, Ruru. Okay. Record 33. This, without a synopsis, hastily, the last, the day. Quick, to the newspaper. Perhaps there. I read the paper with my eyes. Exactly. My eyes now are like a pen, or like a counting machine, which you hold and feel in your hands like a tool, something foreign, an instrument. In the newspaper, on the first page in large print. The enemies of happiness are awake. Hold to your happiness with both hands. Tomorrow all work will stop, and all numbers are to come to be operated upon. Those who fail to come will be submitted to the machine of the well-doer. Tomorrow? How can there be any tomorrow? Following my daily habit, I stretched out my arm, instrument, to the bookshelf to put today's paper with the rest within a cover ornamented with gold. While doing this, what for? What does it matter? Never again shall I, within this cover, never. And out of my hands, down to the floor it fell. I stood looking all around, over all my room. Hastily I was taking away, feverishly, putting into some unseen valise, everything I regretted leaving here, my desk, my books, my chair. Upon that chair I-330 had sat that day. I was below on the floor. My bed. Then, for a minute or two, I stood and waited for some miracle to happen. Perhaps the telephone would ring. Perhaps she would say that... But no, no miracle. I am leaving, going into the unknown. These are my last lines. Farewell, you, my unknown beloved ones, with whom I have lived through so many pages, before whom I have bared my diseased soul, my whole self to the last broken little screw, to the last cracked spring. I am going. Thank you for the bitty silly. It was a very silly bit. Record 34. Forgiven Ones. A Sunny Night. A Radio Valkyrie. There are several alerts for that. I think there's 3 or 4.
Please fight me.
Yeah, there's Rock Lee. Huh? The 2... Oh, I think it's one's because Stream Elements is doing it. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, no, that's going to turn off everything, all my chat and everything. Shit. Alerts. That's going to... Yeah, I have a couple things that have overlaps. I do need to replace that. Oh, shit, where's my page? There we go. Anyway, back to chapter 34. Oh, if only I had actually broken myself to pieces. If only I had actually found myself with her in some place beyond the wall, among beasts showing their yellow tusks. If only I had never actually returned here. Oh, thanks for claiming King of the Hill, Apollo. If only I had actually found myself with her in some place beyond the wall, among beasts showing their yellow tusks. If only I had never actually returned here, it would be 1,000, a million times easier. But now, what? Now to go and choke that. But would it help? No, no, no. Take yourself in hand, D503. Set into yourself the firm hub of logic. At least, for a short while, weigh heavily with all your might on the lever, and like the ancient slave, turn the millstones of syllogisms until you have written down and understood everything that happened. When I boarded the Integral, everyone was already there and in his place. All the cells of the gigantic hive were filled. Through the decks of glass, tiny ant-like people below, at the telegraph, dynamo, transformers, altimeters, ventilators, indicators, motors, pumps, tubes. In the saloon, people were sitting over tables and instruments, probably those commissioned by the Scientific Bureau. Near them, the second builder and his 2 aides. All 3 had their heads down between their shoulders like turtles, their faces gray, autumnal, rayless. "Well?" I asked. "Well, somewhat uncanny," one of them replied, smiling a gray, rayless smile. "Perhaps we shall have to land in some unknown place, and generally speaking, nobody knows." I could hardly bear to look at them. When in an hour or so I was to throw them out with my own hands, to cast them out from the cozy figures of our table of hours, to tear them away forever from the mother's breast of the United States. They reminded me of the tragic figures of the 3 forgiven ones. A story known to all of our school children. It tells about 3 numbers who, by way of experiment, were exempted for a whole month from any work. Go wherever you will, do what you will, they were told. The unhappy 3 spent their whole time wandering around their usual place of work and gazing within with hungry eyes. They would stop on the plazas and busy themselves for hours repeating the motions which they had been used to making, certain hours of the day. It became a bodily necessity for them to do so. They would saw and plane the air with unseen sledgehammers. They would bang upon unseen stakes. Finally, on the 10th day, they could bear it no longer. They took one another by the hand, entered the river, and to the accompaniment of the march, they waded deeper and deeper into the water, ending their sufferings forever. I repeat, it was hard for me to look at them, and I was anxious to leave them. "I just want to take a glance into the engine room and then off," I said. They were asking me questions. What voltage should be used for the initial spark? How much ballast water was needed in the tank aft? As if a phonograph were somewhere within me, I was giving quick and precise answers, but I, my inner self, was busy with my own thoughts. In the narrow passage, gray units were passing, gray faces, and for a second, one face with its hair low over the forehead, eyes gazing from deep beneath it. It was that same man. I understood. They had come, and there was no escape from it for me. Only minutes remained, a few dozen minutes, an infinitesimal molecular quiver of my whole body. This quivering did not stop to the very end. It was as if an enormous motor had been placed under the very foundation of my body, which was so light that the walls, partitions, cables, beams, lights, everything was quivering. I did not yet know whether she was there, but I had no time. They were calling me, quick, to the commander's bridge. Time to go. Where? Gray, rayless faces. Below in the water, tense blue veins. Heavy cast-iron patches of sky. It was so difficult to lift my cast-iron hand and take up the receiver of the commander's telephone. Up, 45 degrees. A heavy explosion, a jerk. A rabid, greenish-white mountain of water aft. The deck beneath my feet began to move, soft as rubber, and everything below, my whole life, forever, for a second, falling deeper and deeper into a sort of funnel, becoming more and more compressed. The icy blue relief map of the city, the round bubbles of cupolas, the lonely leaden finger of the accumulating tower. Then, instantaneously, a cotton curtain of cloud. We pierced it, and there was the sun and the blue sky. Seconds, minutes, miles. The blue was hardening, fast filling with darkness. Like drops of cold silver sweat, the stars appeared. A sad, unbearably bright, black, starry, sunny night. As if one had become deaf, one still saw that the pipes were roaring, but one only saw, dead silence all about. The sun was mute. It was natural, of course. One might have expected it. We were beyond the terrestrial atmosphere. The transition was so quick, so sudden, that everyone became timid and silent. Yet I thought I felt easier under that fantastic mute sun. I had bounded over the inevitable border, having left my body somewhere there below, and I was soaring bodiless to a new world where everything was to be different upside down. "Keep the same course," I shouted into the engine room. Or perhaps it was not but a phonograph in me, and the same machine that I was, with a mechanical, hinge-like movement, handed the commander's trumpet to the second builder. Permeated by the most delicate, molecular quiver known to me, I ran down the companionway to seek the door of the saloon. An hour later it was to latch and lock itself. At the door stood an unfamiliar number. He was small, with a face like 100 or 1,000 others which are usually lost in a crowd, but his arms were exceptionally long. They reached down to his knees, as if they had been taken by mistake from another set of human organs and fastened to his shoulders. The long arms stretched out and barred the way. "Where do you want to go?" It was obvious that he was not aware that I knew everything. All right, perhaps it had to be that way. From above him, in a deliberately significant tone, I said, "I am the builder of the integral, and I am directing the test flight. Do you understand?" Thanks for the lurks, Apollo. The arm drew away. Saloon. Heads covered with bristles, gray iron bristles and yellow heads, and bald, ripe heads were bent over the instruments and maps. Swiftly, with a glance, I gathered them with my eyes. Off I ran, back down the long passage, then through the hatch into the engine room. It was hot there from the red tubes, overheated by the explosions, a constant roar. The levers were dancing their desperate, drunken dance, moving ceaselessly with a barely noticeable quiver. The arrows and the dials. There, at last, near the tachometer, a notebook in his hand, was that man with the low forehead. "Listen," I shouted straight into his ear because of the roar. "Is she here? Where is she?" "She? There at the radio." I dashed over. There were 3 of them, all with receiving helmets on. She seemed a head taller than usual, wingy, sparkling, flying like an ancient Valkyrie. The bluish sparks from the radio seemed to emanate from her. From her also that ethereal, lightning-like odor of the ozone. "Someone, well, you, for instance," I said to her, panting from having run. "I must send a message down to Earth, to the docks. Come, I shall dictate it to you." Close to the apparatus, there was a small, box-like cabin. We sat at the table side by side. I found her hand and pressed it hard. "Well, what is going to happen?" "I don't know. Do you realize how wonderful it is? To fly without knowing where, no matter where. It will soon be 12 o'clock, and nobody knows what. And when night, where shall you be? Where shall you and I be tonight? Perhaps somewhere on the grass, on dry leaves?" Blue sparks emanated from her, and the odor of lightning, and the vibration within me became more and more frequent. "Write down," I said loudly, panting from having run. "Time, 11:20, speed, 5800. Last night she came to me with your note. I know everything. Don't talk, but the child is yours. I sent her over. She's already beyond the wall. She will live." I was back on the commander's bridge, back in the delirious night with its black starry sky and its dazzling sun. The hands of the clock on the table were slowly moving from minute to minute. Everything was permeated by a thin, hardly perceptible quivering. Only I noticed it. For some reason, a thought passed through my head. It would be better if all this took place not here, but somewhere below, nearer to Earth. "Stop," I commanded. We kept moving by inertia, but more and more slowly. Now the integral was caught for a second by an imperceptible little hair. For a second it hung motionless. When the little hair broke, the integral, like a stone... The hell is that? By an imperceptible little hair, for a second it hung motionless, then the little hair broke, and the integral, like a stone, dashed downward with increasing speed. That way minutes, tens of minutes passed in silence. My pulse was audible. The hand of the clock before my eyes came closer and closer to 12. It was clear to me that I was a stone, I-330, the Earth, and the stone was under irresistible compulsion to fall downward, to strike the Earth and break into small pieces. What if? Already the hard, blue smoke of clouds appeared below. Is that an AI GIF? It looks like it. Already the hard, blue smoke of clouds appeared below. What if? But the phonograph within me, with a hinge-like motion and precision, took the telephone and commanded, "Low speed." The stone ceased falling. Now only the 4 lower tubes were growling, 2 ahead and 2 aft, only enough to hold the integral motionless, and the integral, only slightly trembling, stopped in the air as if anchored, about 1 kilometer from the Earth. Everybody came out on deck. It was shortly before 12, before the sounding of the dinner gong, and leaned over the glass railing. Hastily, in huge gulps, they devoured the unknown world which lay below, beyond the green wall. Amber, blue, green, and on the autumnal woods, prairies, a lake. At the edge of a little blue saucer, some lone yellow debris, a threatening, dried-out yellow finger. It must have been the tower of an ancient church, saved by a miracle. Look there to the right. There, over the green desert, a brown blot was rapidly moving. I held a telescope in my hands, and automatically I brought it to my eyes. The grass reaching their chests, a herd of brown horses was galloping, and on their backs, they, black, white, and dark. Behind me, I assure you, I saw a face. Go away, tell it to someone else. Well, look for yourself, here's the telescope. They had already disappeared. Endless green desert. And in that desert, dominating it completely, and dominating me, and everybody, the piercing vibrations of the gong. Dinner time, 1 minute to 12. For a second, the little world around me became incoherent, dispersed. Someone's brass badge fell to the floor. It mattered little. Soon it was under my heel, a voice, and I tell you, it was a face. A black square, the open door of the main saloon. White teeth pressed together, smiling, and at that moment, when the clock began slowly to strike, holding its breath between beats, and when the front rows began to move toward the dining saloon, the rectangle of the door was suddenly crossed by the 2 familiar, unnaturally long arms. Stop! Someone's fingers sank piercing into my palm. It was I-330. She was behind me. Who is it? Do you know him? Is he not? He was already lifted upon somebody's shoulders, above 100 other faces, his face like hundreds, like thousands of other faces, yet unique among all, His face like hundreds, like thousands of other faces, yet unique among them all. In the name of the Guardians, you, to whom I talk, they hear me. Every one of them hears me. I talk to you, we know. We don't know your numbers yet, but we know everything else. The integral shall not be yours. Test flight will be carried out to the end, and you will not dare to make another move. You, with your own hands, will help to go with the test, and afterward... Well, I have finished. Silence. The glass plates under my feet seemed soft, cotton-like. My feet, too, soft, cotton-like, beside me. She was a dead white smile, angry blue sparks, through her teeth to me. Ah, it is your work. You did your duty. Well, she tore her hand from mine. The Valkyrie helmet with indignant wings was soon to be seen some distance in front of me. I was alone, torpid, silent. Like everyone else, I followed into the dining saloon, but it was not I. I told nobody, save these white, mute pages. I cried this to her within me, inaudibly, desperately, loudly. She was across the table, directly opposite me, and not once did she even touch me with her gaze. Beside her, someone's ripe yellow bald head. I heard, it was I-330's voice. Nobility of character, but my dear professor, even a superficial etymological analysis of the word shows that it is a superstition, a remnant of the ancient feudal epoch. I felt I was growing pale, and that they would soon notice it. But the phonograph within me performed the prescribed 50 chewing movements for every bite. I locked myself into myself as though into an opaque house. I threw up a heap of rocks before my door and lowered the window blinds. Afterward, the telephone of the commander was again in my hands, and again we made the flight through the clouds with icy, supreme anxiety into the icy, starry night into the icy, starry, sunny night. Minutes, hours passed. Apparently all that time the motor of logic within me was working feverishly at full speed, for suddenly somewhere, at a distant point of the dark blue space, I saw my desk, and the gill-like cheeks of you bent over it, and the forgotten pages of my records. It became clear to me, nobody but her, everything was clear to me. If only I could reach the radio room soon. Wing-like helmets, the odor of blue lightning. I remember telling her something in a low voice, and I remember how she looked through me, and how her voice seemed to come from a distance. I am busy. I am receiving a message from below. You may dictate yours to her. The small, box-like little cabin. I thought for a second, and then dictated in a firm voice. Time, 1440. Going down. Motor stopped. The end of all. The commander's bridge. The machine heart of the integral stopped. We were falling. My heart could not catch up, and would remain behind and rise higher and higher into my throat. Clouds. And then, a distant green spot. Everything green. More and more distinct, running like a storm toward us. Soon the end. The porcelain-like distorted white face of the second builder. It was he who struck me with all his strength. I hurt my head on something, and through the approaching darkness, I heard while falling, "Full speed, aft!" A brusque jolt upward. Record 35. In a ring, a carrot. Murder. I did not sleep all night, but one thought the whole night. As a result of yesterday's mishap, my head is tightly bandaged. It seems to me not a bandage, but a ring, a pitiless ring of glass iron, riveted about my head, and I am busy with the same thought, always the same thought in my riveted circle, to kill you, and then go to her and say, "Now do you believe?" What is most disquieting is that to kill is dirty, primitive. To break her head with something, the thought of it gives me a peculiar sensation of something disgustingly sweet in my mouth, and I'm unable to swallow my saliva. I'm always spitting into my handkerchief, yet my mouth feels dry. I had in my closet a heavy piston rod which had cracked during the casting, and which I had brought home in order to find out with a microscope the cause of the cracking. I made my manuscript into a tube. Let her read me the last letter. pushed the broken piston into that tube and went downstairs. The stairway seemed endless, the steps disgustingly slippery, liquid. I had to wipe moisture from my mouth very frequently. Downstairs, my heart dropped. I took the piston out and went to the controller's table, but she was not there. Instead, an empty, icy desk with ink blots. And then I remembered that today all work had stopped. Everyone was to go to be operated upon. There was no need for her to stay here. There was nobody to be registered. The street. It was windy. The sky seemed to be composed of soaring panels of cast iron, and exactly as it had seemed for one moment yesterday, the whole world was broken up into separate, sharp, independent fragments, and each of these fragments was falling at full speed. Each would stop for a second, hang before me in the air, and disappear without a trace. It was as if the precise black letters on this page should suddenly move apart and begin to jump hither and thither in fright. So that there was not a word on the page, only nonsensical jum were. The crowd seemed just as nonsensical, dispersed, not in rows, going forward, backward, diagonally, transversely. When is my ad starting? The ad is starting imperceptibly soon. So I'm going to take a break for a second and get some more water. All right, the ad should be drawing to a close in a few seconds here. Let's see. How's everyone's day? Glad you could all join me. Anyone who's still listening. It's always good to have an audience, especially when I'm finishing off a book. I'm excited. I might be able to get 2 done this month. And we're back from the break.
No, we're not.
Thank you for the hydrate. Then nobody, for a second, suddenly stopping in my mad dash, I saw on the second floor, in the glass cage of a room hanging in the air, a man and a woman, a kiss. She, standing with her whole body bent backward, brokenly. This is for the last time. Forever. At a corner, a thorny moving bush of heads. Above the heads, separate, floating in the air, a banner. Down with the machines, down with the operation. And distinct from my own self, I thought, is it possible that each one of us bears such a pain that it can be removed only with this heart? Or that it can be removed only with his heart? That something must be done to each one before he... For a second, everything disappeared for me from the world, except my beast-like hand with the heavy cast-iron package it held. A boy appeared. He was running, a shadow under his lower lip. The lower lip turned out like the cuff of a rolled-up sleeve. His face was distorted. He wept loudly. He was running away from someone. The stamping of feet was heard behind him. The boy reminded me, "You must be in school. I must hurry." Fuck. I lost my place. I ran to the nearest opening of the underground railway. At the entrance, someone passed me and said, "Not running. No trains today. There." I descended. A sort of general delirium was reigning. The glitter of cut crystal suns. Platform packed closely with heads. An empty, torpid train. In the silence, a voice. I could not see her, but I knew that intense, living, flexible, whip-like, flogging voice. I felt there that sharp triangle of brows drawn to the temples. Let me reach her. I must. Someone's tentacles caught my arm, my shoulders. I was nailed. In the silence I heard, "No, go up to them. There they will cure you. There they will overfeed you with that leavened happiness. Satiated, you will slumber peacefully, organized, keeping time and snoring sweetly. Is it possible that you do not hear yet that great symphony of snoring? Foolish people, don't you realize that they want to liberate you from these gnawing, worm-like, torturing question marks? And you remain standing here and listening to me? Quick, up to the great operation. What is your concern? If I remain here alone, what does it matter to you if I want to struggle, hopelessly struggle? So much the better. What does it matter to you that I do not want others to desire for me? I want to desire for myself, if I desire the impossible." Another voice, slow, heavy. "Ah, the impossible, which means to run after your stupid fancies. Those fancies would whirl from under your very noses like a tail. No, we shall catch that tail, and then swallow it, and fall snoring. A new tail will become necessary. They say the ancients had a certain animal which they called ass. In order to make it go forward, they would attach a carrot to a bough held in front of its nose, so that it could not reach it, if it had caught and swallowed it. The tentacles suddenly let me go. I threw myself towards the place she was speaking from, but at the very moment everything was brought down in confusion. Shouts from behind. "They're coming here! Coming here!" The lights twinkled and went out. Someone had cut the cable, and everything was alive. And everything was like a lava of cries, groaning, heads, fingers. I do not know how long we were rolled about that way in the underground tube. I only remember that underneath my feet steps were felt. Dusk appeared, becoming brighter and brighter, and again we were in the street, dispersing fan-wise in different directions. Again I was alone. Wind, gray, low twilight crawling over my head. In the damp glass of the sidewalk, somewhere very deep, there were light, topsy-turvy walls and figures moving along, feet upward.
Feet.
And that terribly heavy package in my hands pulled me down into that depth to the bottom. At the desk again, you was not yet there. Her room was dark and empty. I went up to my room, turned on the light. My temples, tightly bound by the iron ring, were pulsating. I paced and paced, always in the same circle. My table, the white package on the table, the bed, my table, the white package on the table. In the room to my left, the curtains were lowered. To my right, the knotty bald head bent over a book, the enormous parabolic forehead. Wrinkles on the forehead like a series of yellow Wrinkles on the forehead like a series of yellow illegible lines. At times our eyes met, and then I felt those lines were about me. It happened at 21 o'clock exactly. You came in on her own initiative. I remember that my breathing was so loud that I could hear it, and that I wanted to breathe less noisily, but was unable to. She sat down and arranged the fold of her unif on her knees. The pinkish-brown gills were waving. "Oh dear, is it true that you are wounded? I just learned about it, and at once I ran." The piston was before me on the table. I jumped up, breathing even louder. She heard and stopped halfway through a word and rose. Already I had located the place on her head. Something disgustingly sweet was in my mouth. My handkerchief. I could not find it. I spat on the floor. The fellow with the yellow, fixed wrinkles which think of me, he must not see. It would be even more disgusting if he could. I pressed the button. I had no right to, but who cared about rights at the moment? The curtains fell. Evidently, she felt and understood what was coming, for she rushed to the door, but I was quicker than she, and I locked the door with the key, breathing loudly and not for a second taking my eye from that place on her head. "You! Are you mad? How dare you?" She moved backward toward the bed, put her trembling hand between her knees. Like a tense spring, folding her firmly with my gaze, I slowly stretched out my arm toward the table. Only one arm could move, and I snatched the piston. "I implore you, one day, only one day. Tomorrow I shall go and attend to the formalities." What was she talking about? I swung my arm, and I consider I killed her. Yes, you, my unknown readers, you have the right to call me a murderer. I know that I should have dealt the blow on her head, had she not screamed. For the sake, I agree, one moment." With trembling hands, she tore off her unif. A large, yellow, drooping body, she fell upon the bed. Then I understood. She thought I had pulled the curtains that I wanted. This was so unexpected and so stupid that I burst out laughing. Immediately, the tense spring within me broke, and my hand weakened, and the piston fell to the floor. Here I learned from personal experience that laughter is the most terrible of weapons. You can kill anything with laughter, even murder. I sat at my table and laughed desperately. I saw no way out of that absurd situation. I don't know what would have been the end if things had run their natural course, but suddenly a new factor in the arithmetical chain. The telephone rang. I hurried, grasped the receiver. I heard an unfamiliar voice. "Wait a minute." Annoying, infinite buzzing. Heavy steps from afar, nearer and louder like cast iron. And... "D503? The well-doer speaking. Come at once to me." Ding. He hung up the receiver. Ding, like a key in a keyhole. You was still in bed, eyes closed, gills apart in the form of a smile. I picked up her clothes, threw them on her, and said through clenched teeth, "Well, quick, quick." She raised her body on her elbow, her breasts hanging down to one side, eyes round. She became a figure of wax. "What?" "Get dressed. That is what." Face distorted, she firmly snatched her clothes and said in a flat voice, "Turn away." I turned away, pressed my forehead against the glass. Light figures, sparks were trembling in the black, wet mirror. No, all this was I, myself, within me. What did he call me for? Is it possible that he knows already about her, about me, about everything? You, already dressed, was at the door. I made a step toward her and pressed her hand as hard as though I had hoped to squeeze out of it, drop by drop, what I needed. Listen, her name. You know who I am talking of. Did you report her name? No? Tell the truth. I must. I don't care what happens, but tell me the truth. No. No? But why not, since you... Her lower lip turned out like the lip of that boy, and her face, tears were running down her cheeks. Because I was afraid that if I did, you would stop love... Oh, I cannot. I could not. I understood. It was the truth. Absurd, ridiculous human truth. I opened the door. Record 36. Empty pages. The Christian God. About my mother. It was very strange that a kind of empty white page should be left in my hand. How I walked there. How I waited. I remember I had to wait. I know nothing about it. I remember not a sound, not a face, not a gesture, as if all communicating wires between me and the world were cut. When I came to, I found myself standing before him. I was afraid to raise my eyes. I saw only the enormous cast-iron hands upon his knees. Those hands weighed upon him, bending his knees with their weight. He was slowly moving his fingers. His face was somewhere above, as if in fog, and only because his voice came to my ears from such a height, it did not roar like thunder. It did not deafen me, but appeared to be an ordinary human voice. Then you, too, you, the builder of the integral, you whose lot it was to become the greatest of all conquistadors, you whose name was to have been at the head of a glorious new chapter in the history of the United States. You. Blood ran to my head, to my cheeks, and here again a white page, only the pulsation in my temples and the heavy voice from above. But I remember not a word, only when he became silent. I came to and noticed how his hand moved heavily like 1,000 pounds and crawled slowly. His finger threatened me. Well, why are you silent? Is it true or not? Executioner? So, I repeated submissively, and then I heard clearly every one of his words. Well then, do you think I am afraid of the word? Did you ever try to take off its shell and look into its inner meaning? I shall tell you. Remember a blue hill, a crowd, a cross. Some up on the hill, sprinkled with blood, are busy nailing a body to the cross. Others below, sprinkled with tears, are gazing upward. Does it not occur to you that the part with which those above must play in the more difficult? Does it not occur to you that the part which those above must play is the more difficult, the more important part? If it were not for them, how could that magnificent tragedy ever have been staged? True, they were hissed at by the dark crowd, but for that author of the tragedy, God, should have remunerated them the more liberally, should he not? And the most clement, Christian God himself, who burned all the infidels on a slow fire, is he not an executioner? Was the number of those burned by the Christians less than the number of burned Christians? Yet, you must understand this, yet this God was for centuries glorified as the God of love. Absurd. Oh no, just the contrary. It is instead a testament to the imperishable wisdom of man written in blood. Even at the time when he still was wild and hairy, man knew that real, algebraic love for humanity must inevitably be inhuman, and that the inevitable mark of truth is cruelty, just as the inevitable mark of fire is its property of causing the sensation of burning. Could you show me a fire that would not hurt? Well, now prove your point. Proceed. Argue. How could I argue? How could I argue when those thoughts were once mine? Though I was never able to dress them in such a splendid tempered armor, I remained silent. If your silence is intended to mean that you agree with me, then let us talk as adults do after the children have gone to bed. Let us talk to the logical end. I ask, what was it that man from his diaper age dreamed of, tormented himself for, prayed for? He He longed for that day when someone would tell him what happiness is, and then would chain him to it. What else are we doing now? The ancient dream about a paradise. Remember, they're in paradise, they know no desires anymore, no pity, no love. They are all blessed. An operation has been performed upon their center of fancy. That is why they are blessed. Angels, servants of God. And now, at the very moment when we have caught up with that dream, when we hold it like this, he clenched his hand so hard that if he had held a stone in it, sap would have run out. At the moment, when all that was left for us was to adorn our prize and distribute it among all in equal pieces, at that very moment, the cast iron roar was suddenly broken off. I was as red as a piece of iron on an anvil under the molding sledgehammer. The hammer seemed to have stopped for a second, hanging in the air, and I waited until suddenly. How old are you? 32. Just double the age, and as simple as at 16. Listen, is it possible that it really never occurred to you that we do not know their names, but I am certain you will disclose them to us, that they were interested in you as the builder of the integral, only in order to be able, through the use of you? Don't, I cried. But it was like protecting yourself with your hands and crying to a bullet. You may still be hearing your own don't, but meanwhile the bullet has burned you through, and writhing with pain, you are prostrated on the ground. Yes, the builder of the integral. Yes. At once there came back to me the angry face of you with twitching brick-red gills on that morning when both of them. I remember now clearly how I raised my eyes and laughed. A Socrates-like bald-headed man was sitting before me, and small drops of sweat dotted the bald surface of his head. How simple, how magnificently trivial everything was. How simple. Almost to the point of being ridiculous. Laughter was choking me and bursting forth in puffs. I covered my mouth with my hand and rushed wildly out. Steps, wind, damp, leaping fragments of lights and faces, and while running. No, only to see her once more. Here again an empty white page. All I remember is feet, not people, just feet. Hundreds of feet, confusedly stamping feet, falling from somewhere in the pavement. A heavy rain of feet, and some cheerful, darling voice, and a shout that was probably for me. Hey, come here, come along with us. Afterward, a deserted square, heavily overloaded with tense wind. In the middle of the square, a dim, heavy, threatening mass, the machine of the well-doer. And a seemingly unexpected image arose within me in response to the sign of the machine. A snow-white pillow, and on the pillow a head thrown back, and half-closed eyes, and a sharp, sweet line of teeth. All this seemed so absurdly, so terribly connected with the machine. I know how this connection has come about, but I do not yet know, but I do not yet want to see. Fuck. But I do not want to see it, nor say it aloud. I don't want to. I don't. I closed my eyes and sat down on the steps which led upward to the machine. I must have been running hard, for my face was wet. From somewhere far away, cries were coming, but nobody heard them. Nobody heard me crying. Save me from it. Save me. If only I had a mother as the ancients had. My mother, mine, for whom I should not be the builder of the integral, and not D530, not a molecule of the United State, but merely a living human piece, a piece of herself, a trampled, smothered, cast-off piece. And though I were driving the nails into the cross, or being nailed to it, perhaps it is the same, she would hear what no one else could hear, her old, grown-together, wrinkled lips. Record 37. Infusorian. Doomsday. Her room. This morning, while we were in the refractory, my neighbor... This morning while we were in the refectory, my neighbor to my left whispered to me in a frightened tone, "Why don't you eat? Don't you see? They're looking at you." I had to pluck up all my strength to show a smile. I felt it, like a crack in my face. I smiled, and the borders of the crack drew apart, wider and wider. It was quite painful. And then, no sooner had I lifted the small cube of paste upon my fork, than the fork jerked from my hand and tinkled against the plate. And at once the tables, the walls, the plates, even the air trembled and rang. Outside, too, an enormous, iron, round roar reaching the sky. Floating over heads and houses, it died away in the distance in small, hardly perceptible circles like those upon water. I saw faces instantaneously grow faded and bleached. I saw mouths filled with food suddenly motionless, and forks hanging in the air. Then everything became confused, jumped off the centuries-old tracks. Everybody jumped from his place, without singing the hymn, and confusedly, in disorder, hastily finishing chewing, choking, grasping one another. They were asking, "What? What happened? What?" And the disorderly fragments of the machine, which was once perfect and great, fell down in all directions. Down the elevators, down the stairs, stamping of feet, pieces of words like pieces of torn letters carried by the wind. Same outpour from the neighboring houses. A minute later, the avenue seemed like a drop of water seen under a microscope. The infusoria locked up in the transparent, glass-like drop of water were tossing around, from side to side, up and down. "Ah," someone's triumphant voice. I saw the back of a neck and a finger pointing to the sky. I remember very distinctly a yellowish-pinkish nail, and under the nail a crescent crawling out as if from under the horizon. The finger was like a compass, all eyes were raised to the sky. There, running away from invisible pursuit, masses of clouds were rushing upon each other. Colored by the clouds, the arrows of the guardians were floating with their tube-like antennae, and farther to the west something like... At first nobody could understand what it was, even I, who knew, unfortunately, more than all the others. It was like a great hive of black arrows swarming somewhere at an extraordinary height. They looked like hardly noticeable, swiftly moving points. Nearer and nearer, hoarse, guttural sounds began to reach the earth, and finally we saw birds just over our heads. They filled the sky with their sharp, black, descending triangles. The furious wind drove them down, and they began to land on the cupolas, on the roofs, poles, and balconies. "Ah! Ah!" And the triumphant back of the neck turned. Again I saw that man with the protruding forehead. But it seemed that the name, so to speak, was all that was left of him. He seemed to have crawled out from under his forehead, and on his face, around the eyes and lips, bunches of rays were growing. Through the noise of the wind and the wings and the cawing, he cried to me, "Do you realize? Do you realize? They've blown up the wall. The wall has been blown up. Do you understand?" Somewhere in the background, figures with their heads drawn in were hastily rushing by and into the houses. The middle of the pavements was a mass of those who had already been operated upon. They moved towards the west, hairy bunches of rays round their lips and eyes. I grasped his hands. "Tell me, where is she? Where is I-330? There? Beyond the wall? Or, do you hear me? At once, I cannot." "Here," he shouted in a happy, drunken voice, showing strong yellow teeth. "Here in town, and she is acting. Oh, we're doing great work." Who are those we? Who am I? There were about 50 around him, like him. They seemed to have crawled out from under their foreheads. They were loud, cheerful, strong-toothed, swallowing the stormy wind. with their simple, not at all terrible-looking electrocutors. Where did they get them? They started to the west, toward the operated ones, encircling them, keeping parallel to Avenue 48. Stumbling against the tightly drawn ropes woven by the wind, I was running to her. What for? I did not know. I was stumbling. Empty streets. The city seemed foreign, wild, filled with the ceaseless, triumphant hubbub of the birds. It seemed like the end of the world, doomsday. Through the glass of the walls and quite a few houses, this cut into my mind. I saw male and female numbers in the shameless embraces, without curtains lowered, without pink checks, in the middle of the day. The house, her house, the door ajar, the lobby, the control desk, all were empty. The elevator had stopped in the middle of its shaft. I ran panting up the endless stairs, the corridor. Like the spokes of a wheel, figures on the door dashed past my eyes. 320, 326, 330, I-330. Through the glass wall, I could see everything in her room upside down, confused, creased. The table overturned, its legs in the air like a beast. The bed absurdly placed away from the wall, obliquely strewn over the floor, fallen, trodden petals of pink checks. I bent over and picked one up. I bent over and picked up 1, 2, 3 of them. All bore the name D503. I was on all of them, drops of myself, of my molten, poured-out self, and that was all that was left. Somehow, I felt they should not lie there on the floor and be trodden upon. I gathered a handful of them, put them on the table, and carefully smoothed them out, glanced at them, and laughed aloud. I never knew it before, but now I know, and you too know, that laughter may be of different colors. Laughter is but a distant echo of an explosion within us. It may be the echo of a holiday, red, blue, and golden fireworks, or at times it may represent pieces of human flesh exploded into the air. I noticed an unfamiliar name on some of the pink checks. I did not remember the figures, but I do remember the letter F. I brushed the stubs from the table to the floor, stepped on them, on myself, stamped on them with my heels, and went out. In the corridor, I sat on the windowsill in front of her door and waited long and stupidly. An old man appeared. His face was like a pierced, empty bladder with folds. From beneath the puncture, something transparent was still slowly dripping. Slowly, vaguely, I realized. Tears. And only when the old man was quite far off, I came to and exclaimed, "Please listen, do you know number I-330? The old man turned around, waved his hand in despair, and stumbled farther away. I returned home at dusk. On the west side, the sky was twitching every second in a pale blue electric convulsion. A subdued, heavy roar could be heard from that direction. The roofs were covered with black, charred sticks. Birds. I lay down, and instantly, like a heavy beast, sleep came and stifled me. Record 38. I don't know what title. Perhaps the whole synopsis will be called Cast-Off Cigarette Butt. I awoke. A bright glare painful to look at. I half closed my eyes. My head seemed filled with some caustic blue smoke. Everything was enveloped in fog, and through the fog. But I did not turn on the light. Then how is it? I jumped up. At the table, leaning her chin on her hand and smiling, sat I-330, looking at me. She was at the very table at which I am now writing. Those 10 or 15 minutes are already well behind me, cruelly twisted into a very firm spring. Yet it seems to me that the door closed after her only a second ago, and that I could still overtake her and grasp her hand, and that she might laugh out and say... I-330 was at the table. I rushed towards her. You! I saw your room. I thought you... But midway I hurt myself upon the sharp, motionless spears of her eyelashes, and I stopped. I remember, she had looked at me in the same way before, in the integral. I felt I had to tell her everything in one split second, and in such a way that she would surely believe, or she would never. Listen, I-330, I must, everything. No, one moment. Let me give you a glass of water first. My mouth was as dry as if it were lined with blotting paper. I poured a glass of water, but I couldn't. The glass back up on the table and with both hands firmly grasped the carafe. Now I noticed that the blue smoke came from a cigarette. She brought the cigarette to her lips and eagerly drew in and swallowed the smoke as if I did water. Then she said, "Don't. Be silent. Don't you see it matters very little? I came, anyway. They are waiting for me below. Do you want these minutes, which are our last?" Abruptly, she threw the cigarette on the floor and bent backwards over the side of the chair to reach the button on the wall. It was quite difficult to do, and I remember how the chair swayed slightly, how two of its legs were lifted, then the curtains fell. She came close to me and embraced me. Her knees, through her dress, were like a slow, gentle warm, enveloping and permeating poison. Suddenly, it happens at times, you plunge into sweet, warm sleep, when all at once, as if something pricks you, you tremble and your eyes are again widely open. So it was now. There on the floor in her room were the pink checks stamped with traces of footsteps. Some of them bore the letter F, and some figures, plus and minus, fused within my mind into one lump. I could not say even now what sort of feeling it was, but I crushed her so that she cried out with pain. One more minute out of those 10 or 15, her head thrown back, lying on the bright white pillow, her eyes half closed, a sharp, sweet line of teeth, and all this reminded me, in an irresistible, absurd, torturing way, about something forbidden, something not permissible at the moment. More tenderly, more cruelly, I pressed her to myself, brighter than the blue traces of my fingers. She said, without opening her eyes, I noticed this, "They say you went to see the well-doer yesterday. Is it true?" "Yes." Then her eyes opened widely, and with delight, I looked at her and saw that her face grew quickly paler and paler, that it effaced itself, disappearing, only the eyes remained. Thanks for the lurks, Apollo. I told her everything, only for some reason, why, I don't know. Not that that's true, I know the reason. I was silent about one thing, his assertion at the end that they needed me only in order. Like the image on a photographic plate in developing fluid, her face gradually reappeared. Trying to convince... Yep. Thanks for keeping the chat alive, Apollo. I was silent about one thing. His assertion that at the end they needed me in order. Like the image on a photographic plate in a developing fluid, her face gradually reappeared. The cheeks, the white line of teeth, the lips. She stood up and went to the mirror door of the closet. My mouth was dry again. I poured water, but it was revolting to drink it. I put the glass back on the table and asked, "Did you come to see me because you wanted to inquire?" A sharp, mocking triangle of brows drawn to the temples looked at me from the mirror. She turned around to say something, but said nothing. It was not necessary, I knew. To bid her goodbye, I moved my foreign limbs, struck the chair with them. It fell upside down, dead like the table in her room. Her lips were cold, just as cold was once the floor here near my bed. When she left, I sat down on the floor, bent over the cigarette butt. I cannot write any more. I no longer want to. Record 39. The End. All this was like the last crystal of salt thrown into a saturated solution. Quickly, needle-like crystals began to appear, to grow more substantial and solid. It was all clear to me. The decision was made, and tomorrow morning I shall do it. It amounts to suicide. Perhaps then I shall be reborn. For only what is killed can be reborn. Every second the sky twitched convulsively, there in the west. My head was burning and pulsating inside. I was up all night, and I fell asleep only at about 7 o'clock in the morning. When the darkness of the night was already dispelled and becoming gray, and the roofs, crowded with birds, became visible, I woke up, 10 o'clock. Evidently the bell did not ring today. On the table, left from yesterday, stood the glass of water. I gulped the water eagerly and I ran. I had to do it quickly as possible. The sky was deserted, blue, all eaten up by the storm, sharp corners of shadows. Everything seemed to be cut out of blue autumnal air, thin, dangerous to touch. It seemed so brittle, ready to disperse into glass dust. Within me something similar. I must not think it. It was dangerous to think, and I did not think. Perhaps I did not even see properly. I only registered impressions. There on the pavement, thrown from somewhere, branches were strewn. Their leaves were green, amber, and cherry red. Above, crossing each other, birds and arrows were tossing about. Here, below, heads, open mouths, hands waving branches. All this must have been shouting, buzzing, chirping. Then, streets empty as if swept by a plague. I remember I stumbled over something disgustingly soft, yielding yet motionless. I bent down, a corpse. It was lying flat, the legs apart. The face, I recognized the thick lips, which even now seemed to sprinkle with laughter. His eyes, firmly screwed in, laughed into my face. 1 second, I stepped over him and ran. I could no longer. I had to have something. I had to have everything done as soon as possible, or else I felt I would snap. I would break in two like an overloaded sail. Luckily, it was not more than 20 steps away. I already saw the sign with the golden letters, the Bureau of Guardians. At the door I stopped for a moment to gulp down as much air as I could, and I stepped in. Inside, in the corridor, stood an endless chain of numbers, holding small sheets of paper and heavy notebooks. They moved slowly, advancing a step or two and stopping again. I began to be tossed about along the chain. My eyes were breaking to pieces. I pulled them by the sleeves. I implored them as a sick man implores to be given something that would, even at the price of sharpest pain, end everything forever. A woman with a belt tightly clasped around her waist and with two distinctly protruding, squatty hemispheres tossing about as if she had eyes on them, chuckled at me. "He has a bellyache. Show him to the room second door to the right." Everybody laughed, and because of that laughter, something rose in my throat. I felt I would either scream or... Suddenly, from behind me, someone touched my elbow. I turned around, transparent wing ears. But they were not pink as usual. They were purplish red. His Adam's apple was tossing about as though ready to tear the covering. Quickly boring into me, "What are you here for?" I seized him. "Quickly, please, quickly, into your office. I must tell everything, right away. I am glad that it may be terrible that it should be you to whom, but it is good. He, too, knew her. This made it even more tormenting for me, but perhaps he, too, would tremble when he heard. And we would both be killing. And I would not be alone at that, my supreme second. The door closed with a slam. I remember a piece of paper was caught beneath the door, and it rustled on the floor when the door closed. And then a strange, airless silence covered us as if a glass bell had been put over us. But only he had uttered a single, most insignificant word. No matter what, I would have told him everything at once, but he was silent. So keyed up that I heard a noise in my ears, I said without looking at him, "I think I always hated her from the very beginning. I struggled, or no, don't believe me. I could have, but I did not want to save myself. I wanted to perish. This was dearer to me than anything else, and even now, even this minute, even I already know everything. Do you know what I was summoned? Do you know that I was summoned to the well-doer?" Rock hard for the words on pages. Welcome in, Snow. Thank you for stopping by. We're on the second to last chapter of the book. We're wrapping up probably pretty shortly here. Yes, I do. But what he told me, please realize that it was equivalent to was as if someone should remove the floor from under you this minute, and you and everything here on the desk, the papers, the ink would splash out and cover everything with blots. What else? What further? Hurry up, others are waiting. Then, stumbling, muttering, I told him everything that is recorded in these pages, about my real self, and about my hairy self, and about my hands. Yes, exactly. That was the beginning. And how I lied to myself, and how she obtained false certificates for me, and how I grew worse and worse every day, and about the long corridors underground, and there beyond the wall. All this I threw out in formless pieces and lumps. I would stutter and fail to find words. The lips, double curved in a smile, would prompt me with the words I needed, and I would nod gratefully. Yes, yes. Suddenly, what was it? He was talking for me, and I only listened and nodded. Yes, yes. And then, yes, exactly so. Yes, yes. I felt cold around my mouth, as though it were wet with ether, and I asked with difficulty, "But how is it? You could not learn anywhere." He smiled a smile growing more and more curved. Then, But I see that you do want to conceal something from me. For example, you enumerated everything you saw beyond the wall, but you failed to mention one thing. You deny it. Don't you remember that once, just in passing, just for a second, you saw me there? Yes, yes, me. Silence. Suddenly, like a flash of lightning, it became shamelessly clear to me. He too, and everything about myself, my torment, all that I had brought here, crushed by the burden, plucking up my last strength as if performing a great feat, all appeared to me only funny, like the ancient anecdote about Abraham and Isaac. Abraham, in a cold sweat, with the knife already raised over his son, over himself, and suddenly a voice from above. Never mind, I was only joking. Without taking my eyes from the smile that grew more and more curved, I put my hands on the edge of the desk and slowly, very slowly, pushed myself with my chair away from him. Then instantly gathering myself into my own hands, I dashed madly out, past loud voices, past steps and mouths. I do not remember how I got into one of the public restrooms in a station in a station of the Underground Railway. Shit, give me a second. What? Where? I do not remember how I got into one of the public restrooms in a station of the Underground Railway. Above, everything was perishing. The greatest civilization, the most rational in human history, was crumbling. But here, by some irony, everything remained as before, beautiful. Thank you again for the hydrate and the stretch, Ruru. Being a real OG today. I need it. Above, everything was perishing. The greatest civilization, the most rational in human history, was crumbling. But here, by some irony, everything remained as before, beautiful. The walls shone, water murmured cozily, and like the water, the unseen, transparent music. Only think of it. All this is doomed. All this will be covered with grass someday. Only myths will remain. I moaned aloud. The same instant I felt someone gently patting my knee. It was from the left. It was my neighbor who occupied a seat on my left. An enormous forehead, a bald parabola, yellow, unintelligible lines of wrinkles on his forehead. Those lines about me. I understand you. I understand completely, he said. Yet you must calm yourself. You must. It will return. It will inevitably return. It is only important that everybody should learn of my discovery. You are the first to whom I talk about it. I have calculated that there is no infinity. No. I looked at him wildly. Yes, I tell you so. There is no infinity. If the universe is infinite, then the average density of matter must equal 0. But since we know it is not 0, therefore the universe is finite. It is spherical in form, and the square of its radius, R2, is equal to the average density multiplied by. The only thing left is to calculate the numerical coefficient, and then... Do you realize what it means? It means that everything is final, everything is simple. But you, my honored sir, you disturb me. You prevent my finishing my calculations by your yelling. I do not know which shattered me more, his discovery or his positiveness at that apocalyptic hour. Only then did I notice that he had a notebook in his hands and a logarithmic dial. I understood then that even if everything was perishing, it was my duty, before you, my unknown and beloved, to leave these records in a finished form. I asked him to give me some paper, and here in the restroom, to the accompaniment of the quiet music, transparent like water, I wrote down these last lines. I was about to put down a period as the ancients would put a cross over the caves into which they used to throw their dead, when all of a sudden my pencil trembled and fell from between my fingers. Listen, I pulled my neighbor. Yes, listen, I say. There, where your finite universe ends, what is there? What? He had no time to answer. From above, down the steps, stamping. Record 40. Forehead wrinkles, hot. Yeah, the language in this book is pretty sussy, Snow. You've missed quite a bit of it, but you should give it a listen sometime. Facts. The bell. I'm certain. Daylight. It is clear. The barometer, 760 millimeters. Is it possible that I, D503, really wrote these? Is it possible that I ever felt or imagined I felt all this? The handwriting is mine. What follows is all in my handwriting. Fortunately, only the handwriting. No more delirium, no absurd metaphors, no feelings, only facts. For I am healthy, perfectly, absolutely healthy. I am smiling. Welcome in, Twitch. Thanks for shouting out, Snow. The handwriting. Absolutely healthy. I am smiling. I cannot help smiling. A splinter has been taken out of my head, and I feel so light, so empty. To be more exact, not empty, but there is nothing foreign, nothing that prevents me from smiling. Smiling is the normal state for a human being. The facts are as follows. That evening, my neighbor, who discovered the finiteness of the universe, and I, and all the others who did not have a certificate showing that we had been operated upon, all of us were taken to the nearest auditorium. For some reason, the number of the auditorium, 112, seemed familiar to me. There they tied us to the tables and performed the great operation. Next day, I, D503, appeared before the well-doer and told him everything known to me about the enemies of happiness. Why, before it had seemed hard for me to go, I cannot understand. The only explanation seems to be my illness, my soul. That same evening, sitting at the same table with him, with the well-doer, I saw for the first time in my life the famous gas chamber. They brought in that woman. She was to testify in my presence. She remained stubbornly silent and smiling. I noticed that she had sharp and very white teeth, which were very pretty. Then she was brought under the bell. Her face became very white, and as her eyes were large and dark, all was very pretty. When they began pumping the air from under the bell, she threw her head back and half closed her eyes. Her lips were pressed together. This reminded me of something. She looked at me, holding the arms of the chair firmly. She continued to look until her eyes closed. Then she was taken out and brought back to consciousness by means of electrodes, and again she was put under the bell. The procedure was repeated 3 times, yet she did not utter a word. The others who were brought in with that woman proved to be more honest. Many of them began to speak after the first trial. Tomorrow they will ascend the steps to the machine of the well-doer. No postponement is possible, for there still is chaos, groaning, cadavers, beasts in the western section, and to our regret, there are still quantities of numbers who have betrayed reason. But on the transverse Avenue 40, we have succeeded in establishing a temporary wall of high-voltage waves, and I hope we win. More than that, I am certain we shall win, for reason must prevail. And, much like 1984, it ends with a little bit of an anticlimax. Seems that our hero did not end up saving the day or liberating one state, but instead was crushed under the heel of authoritarianism. And I guess that's it for the book. Going for how long have I been going? About just under 2 hours. So I think what we're gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and spin the wheel for my next stream, and I'm gonna use that to install a random game from my library. Spin the wheel. How do I get this? Browser source. Add a. No, I want a game capture. Application audio capture, display capture, game capture. Okay. Properties, capture, specific window. Huh, why can't I pick Mozilla? Probably because it's not a game. Okay, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be scary for a minute. Fuck, give me a second, I gotta log into this stupid thing. Okay, here we go. A lot like a wheel, actually, but with more lube. Here we go. I got the wheel. Time to spin the wheel. Alright, and my next game stream is going to be Hotline Miami. Okay, I haven't played that one yet. It'll be fun. Yeah, it's a lot of games. It's like 440 something. Okay, Hotline Miami for next stream. I'm going to write that down. I'm actually just going to go ahead and pin that in my server. That's allowed to delete Overwatch 2 from your list, please, thank you. Yeah, I could probably do that at some point. There's a few things in there that, yeah, you constantly agree with, actually annoying. Yeah, agreed, Snowfesser. Anyway, let's see who's live. Who is live that I'm following? Let's see. Fanning is live. Yui, Isabella, Tio, Bishop, Pansy, Master Base Window, their DJ. Let's. Pansy's running with a couple people right now. Let's see if there's any other readers out there right now. Category, writing and reading. Music, Baldur's Gate. Writing and reading. Let's see, who's this? Hina.
station's receptionist told me I could wait. Chief Bill Vickery would be returning for lunch soon. The waiting room.
Yeah, we're gonna let's go ahead and raid. Ah, fuck! I just lost it. Let's go ahead and raid. Shit! Now I gotta mute myself again. Okay, Hina. All right. Oh, he does not accept incoming raids. Okay, well, guess we won't raid them then. Let's just go ahead and raid someone in our circle here. Let's UETO Bishop. I haven't raided Bishop in a while. Let's raid Bishop. Looks like he's playing Warframe. Start the raid. All right, there we go. There's a raid message in the chat. Shit, did I just break it? I don't know how this works. Fuck. Where the hell did Bishop go? Bishop. I'm just gonna hit the fucking start now button. This is,